They said it was over. They said he was finished. Politically dead. Irrelevant. A chapter America had already closed. But something strange happened instead. The further Donald Trump moved away from power, the more power bent toward him. Not quietly, not slowly, loudly, relentlessly. This isn't a political return. This is a phenomenon. And it may be the biggest comeback in modern American history. January 2021. The cameras were still rolling. The headlines were still hot. And the assumption was simple. Once Trump leaves office, America moves on. That's how politics usually works. Power exits the building, attention follows. But Trump didn't fade. He stayed. In conversations, in arguments, in headlines, in anger, in loyalty. Even without the presidency, he remained unavoidable. That was the first sign something had changed. Every political system is built on patterns. Win, govern, lose, disappear. Trump broke that pattern. He didn't retreat. He didn't apologize. He didn't rebuild quietly. Instead, he questioned the outcome, challenged legitimacy, and stayed permanently visible. To critics, this looked dangerous. To supporters, it looked fearless. But to the system, it was unfamiliar. And unfamiliar is hard to control. Here's what most people missed. Trump didn't need office anymore, because office wasn't where his power lived. His power lived in attention, conflict, identity, reaction. As long as people talked about him, argued about him, feared him, or defended him, he stayed central. The presidency had been a platform. Now the entire country was. This is the end of Trump. That sentence was spoken by analysts, by anchors, by politicians, by opponents, again and again. But every declaration of his political death did something unexpected. It activated his base, because nothing strengthens loyalty like being told your leader is finished. Trump didn't resist that narrative. He leaned into it. Here's the shift that defines this comeback. Trump stopped being just a man. He became a symbol of defiance, rejection of elites, resistance to institutions, refusal to surrender. Symbols don't need power. They create power. And once someone becomes symbolic, they stop playing by normal rules. Millions of Americans didn't see Trump as a politician. They saw him as proof. Proof that you can be attacked and still stand. You can lose and still matter. You can be hated and still dominate. That emotional connection survived elections, scandals, and investigations because it wasn't logical. It was personal. In politics, losing is supposed to humble you. It's supposed to end leverage, end momentum, end relevance. Trump rejected that script. He didn't treat loss as failure. He treated it as the beginning of a new phase. Not recovery, escalation. Trump could have stepped back. He could have softened his tone, accepted the outcome, rebuilt quietly. Instead, he chose confrontation. That single decision changed the entire trajectory of American politics, because confrontation forces reaction, and reaction creates power. This wasn't just about an election, it was about narrative control. By disputing legitimacy, Trump reframed himself, not as a loser, but someone denied. That difference is everything. A loser fades. Someone denied invites loyalty, anger, and defense. Every institution that pushed back, courts, media, party leaders, confirmed his message to supporters. They're afraid. Opposition stopped being resistance. It became validation. The harder the pushback, the more authentic Trump appeared. Imagine if Trump had disappeared, No statements, no rallies, no presence. The story would have ended. Instead, he flooded the space. He stayed louder than his critics, more provocative than his opponents, more visible than the institutions opposing him. Silence would have erased him. Noise preserved him. This is where the comeback locked in. Trump's defeat became relatable, not as policy, but as experience. Millions of people know what it feels like to be told you lost unfairly, to feel dismissed, to feel overruled. Trump didn't just speak about that, he embodied it. Supporters didn't stay because of facts, they stayed because of identification. Trump reflected frustration, distrust, anger at systems that feel untouchable. Defeat didn't break that bond, it strengthened it. Here's the twist that defines this comeback. Trump didn't recover from defeat, he redefined it. He made losing a form of resistance. And once losing becomes resistance, you can never be fully defeated. Defeat gave Trump energy, but energy alone doesn't create comebacks. Structure does. In the next part, we examine how Trump moved from momentum to full control of the political timeline. There's a rule most politicians never question. Power comes from office. Lose the office, lose the power. Trump broke that rule because his power was never administrative. It was psychological. He didn't control policy. He controlled attention. And attention doesn't require a title. Watch the news cycle closely. A week passes, then another, and somehow Trump is still there. Not reacting, initiating. A statement, a rally, a court appearance, a post. Each one forces response, not because it changes law, but because it changes focus. Trump doesn't wait for relevance, he manufactures it. Media outlets insist they don't want to cover Trump, but they do, because Trump guarantees ratings, engagement, reaction, conflict. Ignoring him risks losing audience. Covering him amplifies him. This is the trap. Trump doesn't fight the media, he feeds it, and the media, despite resistance, feeds him back. Here's the difference that defines this comeback. Most politicians respond to events. Trump creates moments. He announces early, speaks unpredictably, interrupts narratives. He forces institutions to react on his schedule. That's timeline control. And whoever controls the timeline controls perception. Scandals usually end careers. For Trump, they refresh relevance, because crisis keeps him central. The faster a crisis arrives, the faster it's absorbed into identity. Trump doesn't outlast scandal, he uses it. Early on, Trump reacted to pressure. Now pressure reacts to him. Legal cases don't silence him, they schedule him. Criticism doesn't weaken him, it sharpens contrast. Trump no longer survives the storm, he directs it. People sense momentum. Even opponents feel it. The sense that he can't be removed, he can't be ignored, he can't be neutralized. That perception alone creates power, because politics follows inevitability. Before, Trump responded to institutions. Media framed his actions. Parties constrained him. After, institutions react to Trump. Media chases him. Parties orbit him. That is not recovery. That is dominance. Once someone controls attention and time, the next phase is immunity. Not legal immunity, psychological immunity, where attacks stop landing. That's where this comeback reaches its peak. There was a time when criticism hurt Trump. It slowed him, forced explanations, created hesitation. That time is gone. Now criticism barely registers, not because it stopped, but because it became predictable. Predictability kills impact. When every attack feels expected, none of them feel decisive. Scandals are designed to shock.
Shock requires surprise. Trump removed surprise from the equation. Every accusation fits an existing narrative. Every charge feels preloaded. Every headline feels familiar. Supporters don't evaluate each case. They recognize the pattern. And patterns are harder to break than facts. Here's the inversion that defines this comeback. Pressure doesn't weaken Trump. It hardens him. Because every attack confirms his central claim: the system is against me. Once attacks serve the story, they stop being threats. They become protection. At this stage, support is no longer conditional. It's identity-based. Criticizing Trump feels like criticizing the supporter. That makes persuasion almost impossible. Facts bounce off identity. Evidence feels like insult.